and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. It is the mother of all hostage situations. A train filled with Pakistan Army soldiers taken prisoner by the Baloch Liberation Army. It's a hostage situation, an intelligence failure, and a metaphor for the state of Pakistan today. The Pakistan Army calls the shots, but it doesn't control all its territory. The TTP is attacking the military in the north, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The BLA is attacking them in the south. Is this the case of the chickens coming home to roost? Pakistan is a country which has sheltered terrorist groups to attack its neighbors. In fact, in 2011, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said it was like rearing snakes in its backyard. You can't keep snakes in your backyard and hope that they will only bite your neighbors, she said. Sooner or later, those snakes will turn around to bite you. Well, the snakes have started to bite. Pakistan is today affected by the same snakes of terror it unleashed on three of its neighbors, India, Iran, and Afghanistan. Now, in Balochistan, the situation has spiraled out of control. In fact, just a fortnight ago, prominent Pakistani politicians said in the National Assembly that the writ of the state does not run in Balochistan. And joining me on the News9 Plus show to discuss this are Tilak Devashar, former RNAW official and author, Major General V.K. Datta, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Aditya Rajkal. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Mr. Devashar, I want to start by asking you this. You know, you're an author of a very definitive book on Balochistan, the Balochistan conundrum, as you've called it. Tell us what this train attack represents in the history of the Baloch freedom struggle, which began almost 2 decades ago. Has a turning point been reached, really? The fact that you have a hostage situation of this kind, a train with hundreds of soldiers hijacked, and it's being held hostage even as we speak now, almost 24 hours later.
Yes, I think this is, I've been looking at insurgency for a long time, and I've never seen something like a train being hijacked. You know, the only time where it came close was in the film Sholay, when dacoits tried to hijack a train, and then Viru and Jay sort of prevented it. But you know, just the mind boggles. To hijack an entire train with about 450 passengers, first of all, how do you stop a train?
Right.
You know, you have to have explosive, you have to have rocket launchers, you have to have some sort of a thing. And then to plan the operation in such a manner that it's an isolated spot. And then to take control of all the hostages so that they don't run away or they don't overpower you.
Right.
So this is, you know, this kind of an operation, this is a very serious escalation of the insurgency, of the Baloch struggle for independence. I think we will now in the future talk about pre-Jaffar Express and post-Jaffar Express when you talk about developments in Balochistan. So that is point number one. And point number two, it is a developing story still. We don't know the full details. We don't know the number of attackers. We don't know the number of army personnel that they have taken hostage. Reports vary from 100 to 182 to 214. You know, these details will filter in, I think, over the next couple of days. And also the army's response. I think initial army's response has been pretty muted.
Right.
They used some choppers which were turned back. I think a drone was shot down. The ground attack seems to have been repulsed. So obviously the Baloch have come extremely well prepared.
Right.
They are there, they are not sort of so concerned about their own life. And they have come very well prepared, and they have war gamed what is the kind of reactions of the past army will have. So I think this is a very major and a very important escalation of what the Baloch insurgency has done.
It's a very important escalation in what the Baloch insurgency has done. And as you said, Tilak Devashar, the fact that there will be a time, we'll refer to it as the pre-Jaffar Express period and the post-Jaffar Express period. But Aditya, he's with me in the studio now. Aditya, tell us, how significant this operation was. You've been monitoring it very closely since yesterday. You got those visuals as well that the BLA released. How significant is this operation? What are you picking up now? What's the latest on this?
One thing that I can tell you, Sandeep, is that this is completely a new chapter in the Baloch liberation struggle that has been there for the last few decades. And we did see sporadic attacks taking place, suicide bombings, also the FC being attacked in Balochistan, and a roadside bomb or some abduction.
Right.
But this is in altogether one of the biggest attacks that the Pakistan army has seen in the last many years or decades, where you see a complete train being hijacked, unprecedented, unheard of completely, and now planted stories being coming out. I agree with Dirishar that initially the response has been completely muted. The Pakistani government has no response. The Pakistani army, ISPR, which gives planted stories all across, is completely muted. At late night yesterday, they said that close to 27 Baloch fighters have been killed.
Right.
If that is true, that means perhaps the fighters' strength is in hundreds, because there are at least 214, if not more, Pakistani soldiers and Punjabi workers and etc. who are still under abduction at that entire area in Bolan in Balochistan. This area that we are talking about, we've received a couple of videos from the BLA about this, which clearly indicates this is a very interior area. There's been no development. That's why reaching there is also a task. The Pakistan army took about 6-7 hours to reach there, to begin an operation really. Until then, there were only helicopters and gunships really hovering in that area. Initially, as a part of their war strategy, they also released women, children, elderly and all Baloch members in that train. So it's only the Punjabi ethnicity people inside the train and mostly the Pakistani soldiers, at least 214 in number. One big development that has just been received by me, I've spoken to multiple intelligence agencies who have now indicated to me, and also the BLA, they have released an audio of their commander who is there at the site talking to his commander who is in Afghanistan. So the conspiracy of this entire attack is being hatched from Afghanistan. That moot question now is that is the Taliban also strategically aligning itself with the Baloch Liberation Army and giving it away to the Pakistani deep state and the ISI? Remember, Sandeep, few months ago, there were these rumors or reports of the TTP and the BLA having some kind of an alliance. The BLA had come out and said that we have nothing to do with either the Taliban or the Lashkar-e-Toiba or any kind of those terrorist tanzeems. We are a political movement. We picked up the gun for our rights and our freedom. And lastly, Sandeep, one last point. What has also happened over the last few months, there have been hectic negotiations underway between a lot of these Baloch separatist groups because they independently work in their own fashion. For the first time in the last 2 weeks, these Baloch groups have come together under the BRAS banner. And they have said our struggle, be it the protest that we are doing, be it protests against enforced disappearances or the violent movement picking up the gun, we will do this together. So this is built and renewed the momentum of this Baloch struggle against Pakistan.
Renewed the momentum in a way that we can't, it boggles the mind, Aditya, the fact that you mentioned that how do you hijack a train? And I'm going to ask this to General V.K. Datta, who's one of the founding members of the National Security Guard and the SG before that. General Datta, how do you hijack a train? I mean, how many hundreds of fighters would it take to actually, capture and immobilize a train? And it's no ordinary train. It's filled with over 200 soldiers from two Pakistan infantry divisions, two elite infantry divisions. Tell us the kind of planning that the BLA would have to do to carry out an attack of this magnitude.
Sandeep, the thing is that it doesn't take too many people to hijack a train. It has happened in the past also, if you recollect. In 1977, in Netherlands, 9 Moroccans hijacked a train with 50 passengers, and it took 20 hours standoff with the Dutch Special Forces. And finally, the Dutch Special Forces stormed the train after 20 days, killed 6 terrorists, and 2 hostages were also killed. So now the thing is only 9 terrorists had hijacked that train, 1977. Now, as far as we are concerned, we have been carrying out practice and rehearsals how to carry out a rescue operation, whether it's an aircraft, whether it's a train, whether it's a ship or a metro station. Now, hijacking a train, as I mentioned, doesn't take much. Now, the thing is that after you hijack a train, how are you going to control those passengers who are inside? How are you going to account for them or release them or kill them? So now the thing is that when you hijack a train, you would like to be placed it in such a place or a position from where the passengers cannot escape without the scrutiny of the people who have hijacked the train. Now, in this case, they have taken and selected the Bolan Pass and the Tunnel 8. And there is a series of 17 tunnels in that area a very rugged terrain, which is difficult to approach, almost about 160 kilometers from Quetta.
Right.
So they have selected the site. They had the intelligence that number of Pakistan army personnel are moving on leave, etc. And now because this train travels a distance of about 1600 kilometers from Quetta to Peshawar,
Right.
going via Rawalpindi. So
Right.
there are people who are also going to Punjab, there are people going on leave. So they had the input that there's a large catch of Pakistani army personnel, ISI, intelligence, police, whatever.
Right.
And therefore they planned out this operation and chose a spot where to stop this train and thereafter how to counter the Paki response coming to that area.
Right.
Now you can imagine if I am in a tunnel, the attack happens or the air attack has got no meaning. Even if they do the bombing, they'll maybe damage the train more or maybe block the entry of the tunnel to some extent.
Right.
But they cannot rescue the hostages.
Right.
To rescue hostages, you have to have a surprise element of 7 to 8 seconds. Otherwise, the people have maybe taped up the train or placed the bombs, or they got suicide bombers sitting with the hostages. You will have a massacre at hand if you try and attempt
Right.
a storming of the train and doing a gung ho. Now it is up to the Pakistan army whether they want to sacrifice their almost close to 200 soldiers traveling in this train along with some of the civilians. But the Baluchis have given a statement, they have released all the women, children and
Right.
old people.
Right.
And they're only holding on to the people from the Pakistan Armed Forces, security establishment, ISI, intelligence, and maybe some Punjabis. So now the thing is, the Pakistan government has got a big problem at hand.
Right.
Do they want to sacrifice the men or do they want to negotiate? And what are they demanding? They have demanded the release of their political prisoners. They have demanded the release of the people who have been kidnapped and vanished by the Pak army. And of course, the liberation of Balochistan.
Right.
Now
Absolutely.
it is up to the Pakistan government, what are they going to do?
It's up to the
Pakistan
Pakistan
and
government what to do. And I'm going to ask Tilak Devashar this. Tilak Devashar, there are about 4 stages in any insurgency. It starts, you have the incipient stage, then you have an advanced stage, and then finally you have a stage where of escalation where the insurgent groups mobilize in large numbers. Do you believe that we have reached that stage here in Balochistan with attacks like this, which are very complicated, which would require manpower of several hundreds possibly to actually capture the train, hold those people hostage? All of that, has the BLA demonstrated that they have actually stepped up their offensive against the Pakistan state? And what does this really mean for the insurgency now going on forward?
You see, the insurgency in Pakistan, in Balochistan, has been continuing in one form or the other right since 1948. When the princely state of Kalat was forcibly annexed to Pakistan,
right,
the brother of Khan of Kalat rose in rebellion. And whenever the Baloch have been in strength, have gathered enough strength, they have broken out in rebellion. So whether it was 1948, 1958, 73, 77, and this particular insurgency began in 2004, and it has been continuing since then. So it has gone through various phases, and the reason why the Baloch have broken out in rebellion, insurgency so frequently is because they do not or have not accepted accession to Pakistan. That is the underlying cause. And Pakistan has not been able to convince them of the genuineness or the fairness of that accession. So now what this particular incident has done is to spin it to a different level altogether. This level of the hijacking of the train is not an ordinary attack on a military cantonment or of a convoy or anything like that. It is exponentially different. And as I mentioned, it's going to be pre and post Jaffar Express henceforth whenever you talk about what is happening in Baloch insurgency. And this is also going to galvanize a large number of young people in Balochistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and other areas too, that the Pakistani state is vulnerable.
Right.
You can hurt it and you can hit the Pakistan army at a time when they are not expecting it to come. So it will have a cascade and a boosting, it will boost the morale of the Baloch and of the other insurgent groups. So I think going forward, the Pakistan army is going to find it that much more difficult And as the point that you had mentioned about the various Baloch groups coming together, that is very significant.
Right.
Because, so far, the Baloch have been split into various tribes. And for example, the Maris will fight in the Mari area, the Buktis in their area, and the Mengals in their area. But now if they all come together, then it is a force multiplier for the Baloch and against the Pakistan army. The Pakistan army will now not be sure that they can't play divide and rule, because then they can be hit all over Balochistan.
Right, absolutely. Pakistan army, this is a new stage of the struggle by the Baloch insurgents. And Aditya, I'm going to ask you more about the BLA, but first I want to ask General Datta about the Pakistan military. What are the responses going to be? The military has been shown up as being incompetent, if you can say that, with this kind of an attack. Its soldiers have been captured, 200 plus soldiers have been captured, they held hostage in the middle of nowhere, as Aditya mentioned. But tell us what the Pakistan army would do. Would they unleash another major counter-terrorism operation of the kind that we've seen in the past, or the last 2 decades, particularly in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area? Would there be another such operation in Balochistan, you believe?
See, Sandeep, the thing is that Pakistan army has never bothered about human right violation respect of the whole game. Unlike the Indian army, where we have never used helicopter gunships or heavy armament or artillery or tanks against any insurgent group in India, or we consider them our own people who have gone astray. In Pakistan, it is the other way around. And I'll give you an example of what happened in Sri Lanka also. The Sri Lankan army used all the arsenal they had against the LTT, whether it was air, armor, artillery, everything. Now the thing is that if an army which has not bothered about human rights violation, they will maybe unleash another phase of terror attacks within Balochistan to terrorize the Balochi people, to maybe force the hand of the BLA back from what they're doing. They are quite capable of doing that. But that they will have to do at the cost of now these almost 200 plus minus Pakistan army soldiers who are in the hands of the BLA in this particular train hijack. Now the time will tell how they unroll and how they handle this situation. Ultimately, maybe the international community is going to step in. If the Pak army unleashes a reign of terror in Balochistan, killing, kidnapping civilians and maybe evaporating them, that's the term we use, that the people are suddenly gone missing and you can't locate them thereafter.
Yes.
So now the Pakistan army is left with a hard choice of either negotiating and agreeing to some demands of the BLA, losing a face within the country, or going for an attack within this area where the train has been hijacked, to not bother about those 200 personnel who are there and kill them all and kill the BLA boys who are also there inside the tunnel. That is one. And the second I mentioned, they'll carry out massive human rights violations within Balochistan to reign of terror.
Aditya, you've been covering the Baloch crisis very closely last couple of years. Give us an idea of these enforced disappearances that we've been hearing about. Something like 6,000 to 7,000 Baloch civilians have been picked up. They've vanished. No one knows where they are. What kind of oppression has the Pakistan military unleashed against the Baloch?
There have been various chapters in this entire Baloch struggle which has, increased the amount of anger, and that anger has resulted in this kind of a, you could say, armed struggle that the Baloch are having. One significant, many years ago, I think it was 2006, was the very humiliating killing of Akbar Bukti.
Yes.
That resulted, Parvez Musharraf was the one responsible for it. They had to almost, they televised it, the killing, and they locked his, casket. And it was very embarrassing and humiliating in many ways. So the struggle not only was violent in many ways, but also a lot of exiled Baloch launched this campaign world over, from Belgium, from EU to UN and other places. More recently, what has happened is that in the last 10 years or so, it began many years ago, but significantly in the last 10 years and 15 years, more than 50,000 Baloch, activists, civilians, including women and girls, have been abducted by the Pakistani ISI. This is enforced disappearance that has happened. Even today, as a response to this hijacking, there are 2 girls in Balochistan this morning picked up by the Pakistani armed forces, and enforced disappearance has happened. Now, Pakistani Human Rights Commission, the several other human rights commissions, even the United Nations has raised questions on these enforced disappearances. But as we know, there is no checks and balances or responsibility or transparency in Pakistan, so nobody's answerable. Nobody's really giving answers as to when these people who have been kidnapped will be really released. So that's why we see this kind of a unity taking place now, because we had Bramdag Bukti, we had Mehran Mari, we had Mengals and others, coming out all across the globe and protesting separately. But for the first time under this BRAS banner, it's going to be a long time for the Pakistani security forces to deal with this menace, because remember, the Balochistan terrain is such that it's sparsely populated. There are large chunks of area, just like in Afghanistan and in Ladakh also to an extent, where there's no population. So it's easy to hide in those areas, build camps. In fact, Taliban recently came out with a statement that ISKP ISIS has a camp in Mastung area or Mastung town of Balochistan, and this camp is being run by the Pakistan ISI. Imagine that. And ISI was the one to give out that particular ISIS man to the US recently. So one can connect the dots and know what's really is happening in Pakistan. How can Pakistan really be trusted? But coming back to this hijacking, it's very much clear that this is the Baloch struggle at the cusp of history. They are redefining themselves, they are regrouping. You can no longer say that Baloch struggle is almost at its end. It's at a brink where a new revival of the Baloch struggle is expected. It's already on its path. And what an embarrassment for the Pakistan army that it's been almost more than 30 hours now, but they haven't been able to rescue more than 200 of their soldiers.
It's a severe embarrassment for the Pakistan military. But I want to ask Tilak Devashar this. You've written 3 books on Pakistan, Mr. Devashar. The fact is that all of these insurgencies are rimland insurgencies. There's Balochistan that's on fire. There's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa where the writ of the state doesn't run. There's TTPs running riot there. But at the heart of it, the Pakistan state is a Punjabi state, where nearly 80% of the center of gravity is actually Pakistani Punjab. What is the Pakistan military calculating now in your estimation? Do you think that they believe that, look, it's okay as long as Balochistan is on fire or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is, the TTP is running right over there. As long as we control Punjab, which is the center of gravity of Pakistan, everything is all right.
So that's a very typical, if I may say so, an army way of looking at a problem.
Right.
If you have to govern, if you have a country, then every person in that country should be important. Should. But in the case of the Pakistani army, as you mentioned, dominated by Punjabis, recruited largely from Punjab, they think that Balochistan and KPK don't really matter. This is where they are wrong. You see, because who is being killed in Balochistan and KPK? It is the Punjabi soldier.
Yes.
And ultimately, that body comes back to Punjab, where the families, where the people ask you what is going wrong. हमने तो लड़के को फौज में भेजा था to, rule, and you're sending back dead bodies. So unless and until there is peace also in the rimland, you cannot be happy just with Punjab. Punjab will not be happy. Punjab, in fact, today, the prestige, the kind of aura that the Pakistan army had is at a very low ebb.
Yes.
Precisely because look at the casualties which the army is taking and the other security forces and police which are taking. In last month, there were 121 fatalities. And if you take, it's number second on the global terrorism index.
Right.
So all this ultimately, and because the army is composed largely of Punjabis, the casualties are also of Punjabis.
Right.
So
absolutely,
the
very important
army can't
point.
Just sit back on its laurels and say that, so long as we have Punjab, it doesn't matter what happens in Balochistan and what happens in KPK.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. Very important point there. The rimland insurgency actually affects the heartland, which is the center of gravity of Pakistan. But, a quick follow-up question to you, Tilak Devashar. There is that issue of legitimacy as well in Pakistan. You have the military that's overseen a fraudulent election, many say, where Imran Khan is thrown into prison, his party was broken up, not allowed to rule. Is there an issue of legitimacy with the Pakistan government today, which would allow, say, the insurgent groups to flourish and for the common population to question the legitimacy of the state itself. How much of a role does that play in weakening the state?
I think it's a very important question, because the government, the civil government, I think lacks a lot of legitimacy. People believe that it has been put into power by the army through fraudulent elections. The PTI, despite everything that the army threw at it, including withdrawing its symbol and not being allowed to contest as a political party, despite that they did so well and should have legitimately won the elections. So the Shehbaz Sharif government has a problem of legitimacy.
Right.
And because the army is seen as supporting such a government, some of their legitimacy is also, diminished from the army itself. And the fact that Imran Khan has chipped away at the army for the last 3 years, calling the army chief as Mir Jaffar.
Yes.
So that itself has detracted from the aura and the legitimacy of the Pakistan army. Today, the army does not command that respect. You see, Pakistan army governed or dominated not because it had guns and bullets.
Right.
It dominated because of that mythical aura that it had.
Yes.
That it would succor people when they were down. It was the refuge of last resort. It was one which guarded the Pakistan, not only the territorial borders, but also the ideological borders. The Nazariya-e-Pakistan of Islam and Kashmir were integral parts of that. That has been severely damaged.
That has been severely damaged, in fact. Yes.
Yeah. And Asim Munir has not been able to rebuild that kind of aura for the Pakistan army.
Yes, a tough task indeed for General Asim Munir. And as you mentioned, Mir Jaffar, he's been called Mir Jaffar, and that train ironically is named after a Pakistani called Mir Jaffar, the Jaffar Express. Yes. So Aditya, this fact that Tilak Devas had pointed out that the Pakistan military itself is under siege. Internally, people are questioning its legitimacy. You have Imran Khan, an extremely powerful and popular leader inside prison. Would Imran Khan be the most delighted man in Pakistan today, given the kind of discomfort that the generals are undergoing right now, even as we speak?
Of course. Imran Khan might be imprisoned, but I think he's the most popular leader even today. If elections are held, yes, he would, come out as a winner, no doubt about that. Not just in Pakistan, but the overseas Pakistanis love him like anything. At one point in time, there was immense love for Nawaz Sharif, yes, but that has diminished drastically, and Imran Khan is the new hero, not just as a cricketer, but as a politician as well now. Apart from that, he has pinched the Pakistan army where it hurts the most. Right. There is a massive divide. There's always been a divide at the top brass of the Pakistan army, but this time around, post-2021, there's been this divide. You've seen what has happened with the former ISI chief who's been arrested, yes, who has been, court-martialed as well. There are proceedings that are underway. Look at the fate of Asif Ghafoor, who was the hero, yes, of Pakistanis during the Pulwama attack and after the Balakot attack. Right. Asif Ghafoor retired and nobody knew. He retired and he is no longer allowed to be on social media or even speak to the media. Right. That's the fate of a top general, Asif Ghafoor, who was actually commanding Balochistan, yes, the Quetta Corps. And he's yes, no longer there. So this is the fate of even the top generals who have money, power, immense respect among the Pakistanis. Right. But finally they are part of a history where nobody remembers them. Right. Finally, I think Pakistan army is going through a churning. Yes. Asif, Ghafoor is a prime example. But apart from that, the current, chief Asim Munir, yes, he's known as a hardliner. He's somebody who remembers the Quran. And he's one of those rare guys, but he wants to end the ceasefire and restart the insurgency in the Kashmir Valley. That's why we are seeing a lot of hectic activity that's underway. Right. He wants to in fact do a U-turn to whatever Bajwa had done, right, over the last many years. So as soon as possible in this summer, he wants to bring back terrorism, not just in the valley because they're suffocated there, but in Jammu particularly. That's why a lot of infiltration is being seen, right, being pressed in Jammu as well. So Asim Munir is a hardliner, but he has still not been able to control or gain that kind of respect or power across Pakistan as former, Pakistani generals like Rahil Khurshid yes, and several others. So as of now, I think it's a very difficult task for Asim Munir. One, to have political legitimacy and support from yes, the political class of Pakistan. On the other hand, the economy of Pakistan completely in shambles, yes, and then right, control the hardliners as well, with right, Zakir Naik getting an open reception in Pakistan and many other hardliners coming out for the first time. Hamas right, also sharing stage with Lashkar-e-Taiba yes, and Jaish-e-Mohammed. This is certainly not something that the United States or the West would love to associate Pakistan
Absolutely.
with.
So troubles coming in battalions, as they say, for the Pakistan military, and that train is a metaphor for the state of the Pakistan military and the country also, as we're looking at Balochistan being on the edge, on the brink, at a pre-Jaffar Express Balochistan and a post-Jaffar Express Balochistan that we just discussed. Thank you very much, Tilak Devashar, Major General Datta, and of course my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul.